If you've been following me for a while, you've probably already seen the original video I made on this matter a few months ago. You can go watch it if you'd like, but it's a bit outdated and I've come across some new information and theories, so I wanted to recreate it. Mandatory disclaimer to inform those unable to use their brains. Most of this is just speculation based on actual canon evidence, as a lot of my videos tend to be. That being said, hopefully this does explain the Dimitrescu daughter's biology a bit. Anyways, to start off, let me just say that I hate when people tell me that they're just FLIs. I hate how the text-to-speech says that word, but we're all going to have to get used to it. If the daughters were just FLIs, they wouldn't have the personalities we see in game, would they? If anything, based on the notes, they'd just be ravenous swarms of mimicked humans constantly searching for their next food source, kind of like the Moroica or Samka. They would have no form of intelligence whatsoever, no sense of civility, no sentience, and so, if they were just bugs, they would not act like humans. Before I delve into the evidence we see in-game, here's essentially what they are: chimeric, fly-like mutants. Their bodies each contain human and fly cells, and the bugs we see are simply under the control of these three women. They can control each fly individually, it seems. In a simpler sense, they have both human and fly forms, or solid and bug forms, like we see in the scene behind the text. There are no bugs to be found, right? I won't claim to fully understand their biology, mostly because it's pretty confusing, but I will delve deeper into actual canon evidence we're given. First, we can look at this note found in the Opera Hall. These 4 pages go into detail about the daughters and how they came to be, and this first page is interesting to me. Alcina was the one to write these notes, but she did not perform the experiments. Mother Miranda did. The girls were a gift for her obedience to Miranda. Plenty of people assumed the girls were already dead when they were experimented on, but with the way these sentences are worded, it seems they were still somewhat alive and perhaps unconscious when the experiments took place. The reason I think this is simple. The first reason being that, with the Moroica and Samka, we can assume Alcina was trying to create more daughters and failing. Why was she continuously failing, you may ask? It's simple. Anytime a Moroica or Samka comes into existence, it's through the same experimentation the girls went through, but they're already corpses and have been drained when they're experimented on. Remember the maiden demo?
So we finally meet.
In the demo, you play as a maiden named Ingrid, who we later see in-game has been turned into a Moroica. She died at the end of the demo, and upon being drained and experimented on, was instead turned into a Moroica rather than another daughter. So essentially, to become a Dimitrescu daughter, you would still have to be alive to an extent. When you're experimented on, if you're not, you become a Samka or Moroica. It's possible Ingrid was alive when she was experimented on, but I don't think many would survive 4 several-foot-long claws to the face. Maybe she's just built different. I dunno. Anyways, on the second page, we get a glimpse into the fact that the daughters are essentially being eaten alive, even if they're not really conscious for it. Because of their affinity to the Kadu, the FLIs essentially merged with their human DNA to make them chimeric mutants rather than just bugs. While their personalities may have been influenced by their birth orders, they wouldn't even have any personality if they did not retain some of their humanity after the rebirthing process. But that's why the FLIs are able to eat human flesh without then turning that person into what they are. Specific conditions have to be met, but I'm not sure if Alcina realized that or if I'm just looking too deeply into this. Moving on. On page 3, 4 days after the experiment began, we see that the FLIs are starting to merge with the pre-existing human DNA, which begins the process of creating a chimeric mutant. And of course, on page 4, we see that it takes about a week for the experiment to be complete, and the girls awaken once more without remembering a single thing of their past lives. However, they're still people. They still make conscious decisions that a little fly wouldn't be able to make, and they have personalities, thought processes, speech patterns, individual mannerisms, etc. They're still people, just mutants now. I hope this is all making sense so far. I still have some points to cover, but I will try my best to answer any questions you may have up until this point or after. Just leave a comment and I'll get to it ASAP. Let's look at the pictures of the experimentation in the journal. I don't remember who tried to tell me it wasn't, but this is Daniela, Alcina's youngest. right before her Kadu was implanted in her brain. Let's get a closer look. I recommend looking at this on a bigger or wider screen, but by the face shape, darker hair, and flower tattoo, you can see this is Daniela. Here are some things I noticed and my theory on it. Before the experiment was even started, Daniela already has a flower tattoo on her forehead. Correct me if I'm wrong because I've never played the maiden demo, but I don't believe the maids at Castle Dimitrescu had tattoos on their foreheads. Could this mean the girls were followers of Miranda instead of maids at the castle? Or maybe this was simply to differentiate them from other experiments. The former would make sense, considering the girls were gifts to Alcina and likely had some tie to Miranda beforehand. However, the latter would also make sense, considering the resemblance to the Dimitrescu crest. The second thing I noticed was the jewelry on her hands. I do suggest going to this journal and taking a look on a bigger screen for yourself to see all the little details, as that's exactly what I'm doing as I type this up. It's a little hard to see here, but specifically on her right hand, the design of the jewelry looks a bit similar to Miranda's hand jewelry. That was as clear and zoomed in as I could get. Those pictures. It just makes me wonder who they were before the experiment, be it maids in the castle, devoted followers of Miranda, or whatever. Now, let's get on to the confusing part, the fly biology. This first page doesn't really give us too much to go off of, other than informing us that the FLIs cannot reproduce by themselves. I don't know much about FLIs, nor do I wish to, but I assume the Kadu in their brains is constantly giving birth to new FLIs to replace the ones that have lived their life and died or were subjected to cold temperatures. Having the Kadu in their brains makes them able to control the FLIs and either become a solid form or become a swarm of bugs to avoid being hurt, probably able to specifically control which parts of their bodies become FLIs while the rest remains solid. After over 60 years of doing this, they clearly became experts. I believe this power is pretty similar to one we often see in superhero media, where, let's say, someone is electrocuted, and instead of being killed, they can now control electrical currents. But again, still people, now just able to control FLIs. Let's look at the next page. I don't think being in cold temperatures would mean the girls actually die or that they would lose a body part, like we see in game. They're just weakened and extremely vulnerable, just like any other human would be. Where gunshots once pass through them with ease and no damage done, when they're weakened in these temperatures, they are stuck in a completely solid form until they warm up, like we see in Daniela's section. It would have been interesting to see parts of their FLIs missing from their bodies where wounds were inflicted. Anyways, because the bugs are simply dormant rather than dead, the girls cannot use them and must rely on other means to finish off their prey or get away to safety. Alcina obviously wouldn't take the risk of letting her daughters be vulnerable when it's below these temperatures, even if they technically can be in that weather. And that's why they're only allowed out of the castle during the spring and summer months. There is concept art that shows them outside in the snow, but I'm unsure if that still applies to the finished storyline. It is kind of a silly weakness to me, considering how powerful they are, but Let's look at the process of the experiment before I point out something funny. I originally thought this was Bella, but this also seems to be Daniela, and we can see how her body is affected by the Kadu. I can't quite tell if what's on her right side of her body is supposed to be her muscles, organs, and bones, or if that's supposed to be some form of mold. I'd assume the FLIs would have to reform into their bones, organs, and muscles again for them to digest things and become solid. But like I said, the fly biology is weird. If you've seen the essay I did on her, remember when I mentioned I saw her as chubbier? You see that bigger body in these pictures? Yeah, we were robbed and I'm salty. Anyways, let's briefly talk about something funny with the FLIs. Did you know that the girls only have their capes when they're at full strength? I don't even know where I would begin trying to explain that, but maybe they're just dramatic. Anyways, I think that's all I've got. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to try my best to answer them or point you in the right direction for an answer. I hope you're all staying safe and happy in these very trying times. Please remember to drink plenty of water and eat lots of food, and thank you so much for watching.